All right, good morning here in the state of Michigan in May of 2022. It's Mike Ritsema here with i3 Business Solutions. I'm the owner here at i3, and I'm joined by Clay Archer out of Florida with DPC Technology. And today we're going to be talking about, is managed IT worth it? What's the differences between break fix versus unlimited IT support services? So Clay and I go back over a decade working together as technology peers in a peer group, sharing business ideas. So I'm really delighted to be joined by Clay here. And essentially, we'll be talking about outsourced IT. Why? And Clay, I think you have some thoughts about this. Let's turn it straight over to you and start the conversation.
Yeah, so thanks, Mike. As always, I'm down here and it's actually hot Florida already in the beginning of May. Such is life. Probably beautiful in Michigan and starting to get bad here. So I think the tide turns every once in a while there about this time of year. But so Mike and I were talking just generally the last couple of weeks about our journeys from kind of before there was what we call today managed services. And what we did was you had a problem, you'd call us up, we'd come fix it. And that would be kind of the end of that. We would send you a bill, and that was kind of the way things worked. And maybe 10 years ago is about the time we met. Things started to change in our landscape, and people went from doing what we call break fix to monthly contracts, or basically what we call managed services. And I was really slow to the party, actually, Mike. We were way quicker to the party than I was. Um, for us, we do a lot of healthcare and we do a lot of dental, and we tend to be a little bit behind the technology curve as far as adoption goes. But I quickly saw in the peer group that you guys were doing three things that we were not being able to do, and three kind of important things. You guys were, with managed services, you were reducing the risk, which I think is a big thing for any manager or business owner. You guys were driving down costs, which obviously is a big thing for any manager or business owner. And also, you were, in certain cases, you were increasing revenue. And on the sidelines, I was saying that those are important things, and I think I need to get my head around how to do that. And so we started down our journey. That was 2012, and now pretty much, not pretty much, we are all we do is managed services. And you and I kind of made the slide, just kind of going through the things there that helped us do those three things of reducing risk, um, reducing cost, and increasing revenues for our clients. And we're kind of just going to go through these one at a time. Um,
Sure, Clay. And I had myself muted because of a train going by. We can measure the economy because of with the frequency of trains, and
there you
a
go.
lot of trains going by. So I had a little challenge with the mute there. And secondly, though, yeah, it's been the rainy season, cold season. It's been terrible. We flock to Florida when we can, but we're finally seeing some sunshine here in Michigan. We're trying to catch up to you.
There you
And
go.
then as far as the journey is concerned, yeah, technology support, I think, has gone the direction of accounting, legal services, and maybe HR services. A lot of small businesses today are saying, do I need a full-time CPA on my staff? No, I outsource that. Do I need a full-time attorney? Certainly not. And I'm going to turn to an attorney when I need an attorney. And HR service, similarly, online also, but man, do I need a full-time HR person? Maybe I could find some help from a specialist. And I think that's what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah, and I think even to each one of those kind of sub disciplines, um, a little bit different than it was maybe 10 years ago, where you need more than just I'm coming to you at tax time. Like, to really
Oh,
drive to the bottom line and do the same things. Let's just say take an accountant for example, for an accountant to save you money, increase your revenues, reduce your risk. It's not just a thing where you touch them once a year. It's something where you need to be um, planning, at least on a quarterly basis with an accountant, but even probably more so than that, and maybe more into like a fractional CFO kind of a thing. As you get more advanced and as time has moved on, those things are more and more important today than they were in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if we kind of converse through this, I mean, consistency is one of the big benefits for i3 Business Solutions. When we work with a client on a month-to-month basis, our ability to standardize and deliver consistent service it just improves substantially.
Correct. And that's across the board, not just from service delivery, but for just driving process. For the average business, they know that they need documentation. They know that they need processes put in place. But if you don't have somebody that's consistently there and that has time set aside to do those things aren't necessarily difficult. They're not necessarily beyond what the average company could do, but they just don't have time. The labor
Right.
time to document and drive some of that process just isn't there, right? And so the only way to make that happen in a functional place is to have a budget of time to do those things.
So I don't know about you, but jumping around the board here, I mean, number 4, sleep. What keeps you
Yes.
up at night?
Right.
I mean, I always say probably the most important thing for small business owners is risk management. The 3 types of risk is financial. Let's make sure cash flow and we don't go bankrupt. And we saw that during the pandemic, the tragedy of cash flow and financial risk. And then secondly, physical risk. Let's make sure stuff's not walking out the back door. And then thirdly, technological risk. And one of the, again, I don't know about you, but we run into it all the time, and often with co-managed small businesses where they do have a tech person on staff. But is documentation. You talk about consistency. We work hard with our techs to improve documentation of the environment, and we have standardized that documentation across all our clients. And that's very valuable, especially if there's some sort of event. The ability to sleep at night knowing that my information is documented, best practices are in place, etc. Documentation oftentimes kind of flies under the radar, but is so valuable.
Yeah, point 4 obviously is a huge one because we all know the environment we're in right now, and there's a lot of different things that as a business owner you're going to lose sleep at night about. First of all, obviously, just cybersecurity in general. Again, I work with a lot of dentists, and American Dental Association was hacked last week. They got one of the big ransomware attacks. All of their contacts stolen and released on the web. So what the bad guys were doing was they were calling all the dentists as the ADA, right, with real information. And so how are you going to stop that from being potentially horrible? The answer there is education, right? Like, so when you have a third party managed IT company, one of the things that we're doing is we're looking at those risks, not only from a technical standpoint, like you mentioned, Mike, but like we train, right? So we go and we do a lunch and learn at our clients' offices, and we talk about this stuff, so that when you do see something happen that looks a little funny, that you're able to identify it. And at the end of the day, in all of our businesses, the weak link for security is the human. And not only that, like from a risk standpoint of a breach or whatever, we all know it's 2022, and HR and hiring and keeping staff and keeping well-trained staff and training staff, it's a huge burden for all of us right now. And you mentioned co-managed IT. It's just the wonderful time for co-managed IT, because most most companies that have in-house IT have trouble getting that balance of what level do they need. They need more than one person, because what happens when they have 2 locations and one person needs to be in 2 places at once, or they need the second person to do the documentation or the security practices. it's really hard to do that right now in this environment. It's so hard to hire good IT people. I mean, you and I can, probably talk for hours about hiring IT people and how difficult it is right now. But to be able to have those resources from the third party is wonderful, because we do all that for you. We hire them and make sure they're good and train them and do all those things. So there's all that four. We probably could talk on four for probably an hour.
You bet. And really what you're talking about is number 6 and 7, and security looks like a firewall, looks like antivirus, looks like all these technical things. Wrong. The human firewall is the biggest vulnerability. And as technology marches on, I always say 3-4 years ago, MFA, multi-factor authentication, was not on the security list. And today, every email account, anybody out there watching should have MFA, personal and business, anywhere you can. And so today it's near the top, if not number one. But secondly, like you say, it's education, and that has risen to the top. The human firewall, being the biggest vulnerability, must be educated. So that proactive ability to work with any client on a month-to-month basis and recommend these things is what we're talking about here.
I heard a great analogy the other day with Swiss cheese. So like security is Swiss cheese. Any one piece of that security stack that you just talked about has holes in it and it's incomplete. Water's going to go right through it. But if you get a whole stack of Swiss cheese and you get a whole brick of Swiss cheese and you pour water on the top of it, nothing's getting through. And that's really what it is you're just doing these layers. And honestly, back when I started on my journey to start being an MSP rather than a break fix client, this was the biggest thing. I work for dentists and doctors that were doing really, really well. They had revenue, they had the ability to do things, and I would come to them and go, you know what, today I am going to change your antivirus program from this to this because the old one is just outdated, or your backup system, we're going to change it from this to this because it was outdated. Or even worse, your backup drives are failing right now. I'm sending you a quote tomorrow to fix those drives. And I was just, you wouldn't believe it, but the amount of times that people would just not respond to those things, right? And so when you're in a managed service contract, you're just paying us to do that. So at the base level of our contracts, and everybody's contracts are a little different, those things are dealer's choice for us, right? So if we want to change the backup system that we're using inside of our practices or inside of our businesses, we do that. The doctor or the business owner does not see any change in their bill or whatever. But we were able to do those kind of things to increase their security on the back end and not have to ask them every time we wanted to make a small change. Now, obviously, IT security changes all the time. So there are other things that we will add to a contract that are outside of the contract as security gets bigger and better, like we didn't used to do Office 365, and those were additions. But the managed IT part of it lets us kind of do the best of breed, even for co-managed IT, do the best of breed and then deliver it back to that business without them having to make any of those decisions. It's really dealer's choice on our side to do what's best.
Yeah, absolutely, Clay.
And that
I mean,
infinitely better. Like that is an infinitely better solution than having us every time something needs to be changed, go to you and ask you for more money.
absolutely. That goes to 2 and 10 is, let's just deliver the value, deliver the service without having to, question every single request and so on. I always say, when a request is made for service, we work on it, we fix it, and then 5 days later, the same problem occurs. If you're that. We're just going to fix it. And if we have to fix it again, we'll fix it again. We're not going to argue over that stuff.
Yeah, my story on that, and this again is early in my journey, is, and this is another dental one, so forgive me for all my dental analogies, but they're pretty good, is Very early, I would see things like an intraoral camera. Everybody kind of knows what an intraoral camera is. When you go to the dentist, they put this little camera in your mouth, and it helps you to be able to see what's going on inside of your mouth. And they call it co-diagnosis. If you go into your hygienist and she sees a crack in your mouth and she puts the camera in there, you're able to see it on a big screen and go, wow, that's really a crack. And if you need to get it fixed, you get fixed. It's good for the practice because it's going to drive more revenue. It's good for the patient because they're going to have proactive care instead of waiting for that to crack the week of their daughter's wedding or whatever. But I would walk into a practice and they would just be sitting there unused. Those machines back then were probably $5,000. They would just be unused. And I would ask the hygienist and she would say, I didn't ask you to fix it because the doctor gets mad every time there's a $150 bill. And it's the perfect example of, something that's best for the practice, best for their patient, best for their revenue stream. And the person that's in control of that is really the hygienist. And they're afraid to make that economic decision because they're afraid that the doctor's going to be upset that they got a bill. And really it empowers the team. And you can take that analogy to anything. It could be a manufacturing plant or a lawyer's office or whatever. If you have a staff member that has a problem, and you have a managed service contract, there is impetus. There's nothing stopping them from putting in that service request. And on the back end of it, because we get more data, we get more service requests, it's easy for Mike to say, hey, this is the fourth time we've been called out to this manufacturing plant for the same device that's driving the same piece of equipment. Maybe we should stop going and fixing these symptoms and sit back and let's have our VCIO or let's have an engineer go out there and really engineer a solution here that's higher than that. And that just didn't happen in the break fix world. That piece of equipment in that dental practice was just sitting there idle for who knows how long. And I think that happens quite a bit in people that are not on a managed service type solution.
Exactly. And I mean, just to wrap up this part of the conversation, we look at 3, 5, and 9. I mean, staffing levels, happier client, and then both sides, happier employees on our side and on the client side, as you described, pick up the phone and call, fix it. Let's make sure this thing's done. That's it. I say essentially what we built is an actuarial type service where we understand across clients, desktop servers, cloud services, security, we understand the cost per person. And we can apply that across our business and deliver more satisfaction, more service, because we're incented to improve the environment so that they're not calling so much. Like you described, they called in 4 times about this. Let's find the root cause. That's the business we're in, right?
It puts both parties on the same side of the table. At the end of the day, the client doesn't want to call and doesn't want to have IT issues. That's really what they want. And when you're on a flat fee billing, that's really what we want too. So we're both fighting for the same goal. And you say actuary and insurance, they're kind of, and that's the way I think of it, because we have the data from before and after, and every managed service provider is a little different there, but we have something internally that we call efficiency ratings. And I can tell that we are actually providing about a 20% discount to our clients because we're able to staff at the normal levels. We're able to predict what we're doing. We're able to buy things in bulk because we know we have X, Y, and Z. Our E-rates at a 0.8 E-rate for us, which means that we're basically about 80 you're getting basically a 20% discount as if we did it for break fix is ideal for us. We're actually quite happy at that rate, and because we're able to predict things, we're able to predict our labor needs and your labor needs, and it works for everybody. And again, we're both on the same side of the table. We're both driving to be as efficient as possible.
Precisely. So just to kind of wrap up or summarize and deliver some thoughts from our perspective, is a big part of delivering month-to-month technology services is continuity. I mean, I don't know about in your small business, but employee retention right now and the turnover, the nationwide, the worldwide turnover of talent is unbelievable, and the tech world is substantial. And we carry that burden. I mean, we've had customers turn over techs, 3 techs in a year and a half. And that's a challenge. And they come back to us and say, okay, I'm done. I'm done trying to hire. Just please take this over. Delivering that kind of continuity is on us, not on the small business owner, right, Clay?
Yeah, and that's becoming more and more significantly an issue. It seems like monthly. We've done very well through it, but we're seeing it in the market, that continuity and just the people often don't realize the true cost of either a bad hire or losing a good employee. And the estimates are 2 years salary, and I think that those are probably in this market are probably low, just because, especially in tech, you have to have tools that they use, and it takes so long to get somebody up to speed on those tools. Yeah, I think in 2022, we will look back at it. This is the year where HR was probably the biggest that it's ever been in the SMB space, the biggest priority that it's ever been in the SMB space.
Yeah, so what we've experienced is, we'll have customers, clients that grow, and they reach a point that they want to hire their own tech. And so then our service goes to co-managed, but we maintain the documentation, we maintain the fundamental services. And then, oops, a year and a half later, that tech moves on and they're like, oh boy, now what do we do? Well, we're here for you. So that relationship, that continuity of relationship has value. Any comments on that, Clay?
Yeah, I think you hit all the. I mean, I don't think there's much more to say than that. The ability to have somebody that has your back, that can also help you, assist you in those transition periods, it's invaluable.
Yeah. So outsourced IT, to me, much like outsourced accounting or technology, looks. I mean, or legal services look like best practices. HR, for that matter. Oops, have a challenge here. Can you tell me what the best practice is? And so I call it checklist process excellence. Who is watching the checklist? In my experience, many techs, brilliant techs all over the world, but not all of them have a perfect checklist. In fact, oftentimes they're running around putting out fires. Who is watching the checklist that aligns best practices as technology marches on? Because technology 2 years from now is going to be different than today. The bad actors are targeting, well, they hit a local university here, Clay. They hit the AMA apparently, or the ADA. Technology marches on, the threats marches on, the productivity opportunities march on. And so aligning those best practices, and somebody please make sure we don't miss that checklist, that hole in the Swiss cheese, and collapse the technology in the whole company.
Yeah, techs just in general, they wouldn't make very good pilots because they don't do checklists. They're great cowboys. They love, or firemen. They love to go out and fix things and go on to the next fire and go on to the next fire. But just in general, and that's I'm painting with a broad brush because there are some that are really, really good at it. But in general, the average technician is just not really good at checklist process. And it is one of the things that a good managed service provider does drive through management and leadership, and there's processes to have processes, and I think that's one of the things that we definitely bring to the table.
That absolutely has been a big part of our shared journey over the last decade.
Yes,
putting documentation and processes on top of processes.
It's the hard part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the hard part. I always say that small business, we have this in common. Every small business moves from people excellence to process excellence. You start with 1, 2, 3 employees, you grow to 10. As you grow this organization, you hire a person, say, do good work, and eventually you standardize that good work. And that's essentially what we've done over the last decade.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right, well, that's a good wrap. I would say if you're in the state of Florida or in America, Clay Archer is available at that phone number there and that email address. And I'm available at that phone number and email address. And we challenge you to apply best practices, standardization, and services to your organization in many different ways, especially technology. Thanks, Clay.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was fun.
Happy days.
Have a good one.